Togo, and across Senegal. Don't miss our daily news bulletins, Newslink.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Banjul, 1 p.m. Port Novo and Abuja. Good afternoon and welcome to the second edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on WADR.org. First, our headline stories. Border communities in Senegal in panic mode following jihadist attacks in neighboring Mali on Tuesday.
They attacked the border. They destroyed all their material, their goods. Everyone is calm. However, they have to reinforce the border security because it is weak.
The Malian army says it neutralized more than 80 insurgents during coordinated attacks targeting military formations. The Guinean Transitional President, General Doumbouya, reshuffles cabinet and creates new portfolios. Elsewhere, maritime experts and port executives converge on Monrovia for a 3-day conference on port security and safety.
West and Central Africa is home to 90% of Africa's population. Underscores our immense potential. By harmonizing security and safety protocols across our ports, we can unlock unparalleled economic benefits.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining this broadcast and welcome to our listeners within and beyond the sub-region. The Malian army has provided an update on the deadly attacks on Tuesday by insurgents, assuring the population of its commitment to fight against terrorism. The army's response came barely 24 hours after the simultaneous attacks that targeted at least 7 military facilities, including 3 barracks and outposts. In a televised statement by the Malian army, 80 terrorists were neutralized during the gunfight, which JNIM has claimed responsibility for. Tuesday's attack in Mali adds to the count of the resurgence of terrorism in the AES member states, which have resulted in significant material damage and loss of lives, including soldiers. Sankle Janko reports.
Colonel Major Suleiman Dambele, Director of Information and Public Relations for the Malian Armed Forces, said more than 80 jihadists were neutralized during the simultaneous attacks. Providing no additional details, Dambele confirmed that lives were lost in the military ranks during the offensive. He also disclosed the recovery of equipment, including weapons, ammunition, walkie-talkies, motorcycles and vehicles. Recall that Tuesday, July 1, fighters from JNIM targeted 7 strategic locations, namely Nyono, Molodo, Sandare, Kei, Diboli, Nyoro du Sahel and Gogui. The terrorist group, in a publication online, claimed to have taken control of 3 barracks, dozens of military positions and barricaded an artillery bombardment of the Molodo military base. The army, however, denied these claims. Tuesday's assault by JNIM further indicates the worsening security situation across Mali in recent days, just as the Russian military contractor Wagner withdrew. Africa Corps, tasked with providing protection services, has also come under heavy attack, raising concerns about its capacity to protect Mali from internal threats and external influences. The Malian authorities imposed a curfew on 4 out of the 14 regions of the country to tackle the rising insecurity.
Sankule Janko reporting there. In a related story, residents in Senegal's shared border with Mali have expressed concern that the trend of violent extremism is just 2 kilometers away from them. This reaction followed coordinated attacks by jihadists in Mali, targeting military positions, including one in Diboli. Situated in Mali, Diboli is closely located near Kidira, an urban settlement in the east of Senegal. This unprecedented attack that took place overnight from Monday to Tuesday plunged Senegalese living along the Falémé River into a state of panic. Let's join Augustine Kole for the details.
The inhabitants of the villages of Djiboli, Jimbi, and Senegal, bordering Mali and located near the Falémé River, awoke in fear. The unprecedented attack on one of the Malian towns closest to Senegal has prompted a reaction from the Senegalese side. Mamadou Dabo is a farmer and resident of Djiboli Fubé in Senegal.
They attacked the border, they destroyed all their material, their goods, but the population remains calm. Everyone is calm. However, they have to reinforce the border security because it is weak. We don't know if they will return when night time comes. Whether they will cross the border, well, we are in the Mediterranean, so they easily cross an attack as they did in Diboli. They will destroy everything here.
In Jimbe, residents are also in a state of fear. After being informed of the attack in Djiboli, Mali, village officials contacted the Senegalese gendarmerie. Alassane Sow is a municipal councillor.
I called the Brigadier General of Arundo. Suddenly, Gassi arrived loaded in 3 cars. I went with them to the border. They told me to inform them whenever I see someone I don't recognize. Well, we are not secured because they said the border is not secure. Maybe they will go back up to see what they will decide. But for the moment, there are no instructions. So we are here. And between us and Mali, it's as if we were in Mali because there is nothing that helps us.
On February 20, the Senegalese army, sensing a threat to its borders, launched joint patrols with Mali. This initiative aims to contain the expansion of the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims, JNIM, which operates in the area. The group affiliated with Al-Qaeda is reportedly present on the Malayan border with Mauritania.
A report filed in by Augustine Kole. Still in Senegal, the Supreme Court has rejected Ousmane Sonko's appeal in the case against former Minister Mame Mbaye Niang. The current Prime Minister's lawyers had filed a complaint with the court in January 2024, citing, and I quote, a procedural error or a violation of the rights of the defense, end of quote. During a session on Tuesday, the Supreme Court chambers ruled the defense's argument as inadmissible. The Senegalese Prime Minister has since responded to this conviction. Details will come in a subsequent bulletin. Elsewhere in Guinea, the transitional president carried out a partial reshuffle of the government structure on Monday. 5 major ministries were split into 2. The ministries of Agriculture, Trade, Industry, Youth, Sports, Culture, Tourism and Energy and Hydrocarbons were affected. According to the Minister and Secretary General of the Guinean Presidency, this measure aims to improve the administrative and sectoral efficiency of public action. This measure is largely unpopular among the population, neither among opponents nor even among supporters of the junta, who believe that the country's economic situation does not favor an increase in the number of ministries.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We stream live on WADR.org and across our social media platforms at WADR English. And now to electoral matters. 4 months before the October 25 presidential election in Côte d'Ivoire, an ECOWAS election mission in Abidjan is engaging actors for the peaceful conduct of the vote. On Tuesday, the delegation met with the Ivorian Independent Electoral Commission, its leadership and senior management. Professor Theodore Holo, head of the ECOWAS mission, told the IEC president, Kubert Koulibaly, that the visit was aimed at collecting information and assessing the state of preparations of the electoral process. Francis Boniface has more.
The visit, according to Professor Olo, would allow ECOWAS to identify the support or assistance it will provide alongside its partners to guarantee free, transparent, and peaceful elections. For Professor Olo, it is essential to ensure that all stakeholders in the electoral process understand the rules of the electoral game and that citizens know which jurisdictions to turn to in the event of a dispute. The delegation also inquired about the electoral timetable, the assessment of political actors, possible implementation difficulties, as well as the consultations mechanisms put in place by the Electoral Commission with political parties and civil society. At the end of the session, the ECOWAS pre-election mission recommended a code of good conduct to be signed by the candidates, as well as the availability of financial and technical resources for the organization of the election. However, months before the election, the opposition in Côte d'Ivoire continues to call for political dialogue with the government to ensure an inclusive and transparent vote. Some of these parties, such as the PDCI and the PPSCI, are also dealing with a dilemma. Their chosen presidential candidates, former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo and Tidjane Thiam, have been barred from participating in the electoral process.
Francis Boniface reporting. Away from Côte d'Ivoire now to Togo, the electoral campaign for the municipal elections scheduled for July 17th began on Tuesday. Candidates have 15 days to convince more than 4 million registered voters. Nearly 1,527 municipal council seats are up for grabs in the country's 170 municipalities. The electoral campaign is taking place in a tense socio-political context. A movement was launched in early June to demand the resignation of the president of the National Council, for Yassingbe. Well, could the protest in Togo have an impact on the municipal elections? A Togolese political analyst joins us in the second half of the news for an insightful discussion. Meanwhile, restoring democratic tenets, values and principles, particularly in the Sahel region of West Africa, was the focus of a virtual conference on Tuesday. The session themed the crisis of democracy in West Africa and the Sahel, understanding the resurgence of military coups and governance challenges, was organized by Clean Foundation, West Africa Civil Society Institute, Savannah Center for Diplomacy, Democracy, and Leading Regional Voices. The Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice in the Gambia was part of the critical conversation aimed at deriving solutions focused on military coups, governance struggles, and their ripple effect across the Sahel, Nigeria, and beyond. Dr. Salahuddin Hashim is Director of Programs at Clean Foundation.
For us, it is very necessary to allow us to expand conversation around how democracy in the Sahel has constantly backslided. And this is because there has been quite a whole lot of setbacks related to both governance, institutions, and of course, democratic infrastructure that supports social, economic, and political well-being in the region. This conversation is a series that will help us to galvanize thoughts, share ideas, and of course, cross-fertilize thinking to coordinate within the Sahel region what are the sustainable solutions that can help us to further advance democratic tenets, values, and of course, see how we can integrate all of these thoughts into a more refined direction and shape thrust within the space of ensuring that we advance our own thought in the region. In recent past, we have realized that the Sahel has suffered quite a whole lot of governance deficit. This therefore means that everything that needs or requires to have gone wrong in that region is actually happening. One is that it is a playground for terrorists and terrorism. And then, of course, it is a region that has therefore provided the upper wing of sandwich on the northern part of Nigeria, putting pressure on some of the terrorist expansionist movements that we have also recorded. So by and large, what we are witnessing in that region has also become a little bit of a concern, not to countries that are bordering that particular space, but again to the global community.
Dr. Salahuddin Hashim is Director of Programs at Clean Foundation. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal, and follow us on our social media platforms at WADR English. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Border communities in Senegal in panic mode following jihadist attacks in neighboring Mali on Tuesday. And the Malian army says it neutralized more than 80 insurgents during coordinated attacks targeting military formations. In Guinea, Transitional President General Doumbouya reshuffles cabinet and creates new portfolios. Still ahead in the news, maritime experts and port executives converge on Monrovia for a 3-day conference on port security and safety. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in Accra, Ghana today for a 48-hour working visit. We also have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for staying with us. Let's now take you to Ghana, where the government is set to receive Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi for a 2-day official visit, which Ghana and India say will usher in a new chapter in the 6-decade-old diplomatic and economic partnership between the two countries. The visit, scheduled for July 2nd and 3rd, 2025, is expected to focus on trade, investment, and broader strategic cooperation. From Accra, Nadiri Tete reports.
The Indian Prime Minister's visit, the first by an Indian leader in 30 years, forms part of efforts to deepen the bilateral relations between Ghana and India, which have been maintained over 6 decades of fraternal ties. A key highlight of the visit will be Prime Minister Modi's conferment with the companion of the Order of the Star of Ghana, the nation's highest honor, at a state banquet hosted by President John Dramani Mahama. Prime Minister Modi will join an exclusive list of global leaders, including Kenya's President William Ruto, Morocco's King Mohammed VI, and Brazil's Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who have received the prestigious award. The Indian leader is also scheduled to address Ghana's parliament on Thursday, July 3, marking a significant moment in Ghana's diplomatic calendar. The Indian leader is also scheduled to address Ghana's parliament on Thursday, July 3. Ahead of that, Prime Minister Modi will engage with the Indian community in Ghana and lay a wreath at the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park, a symbolic gesture honoring the shared history between the two nations. Bilateral talks between President Mahama and Prime Minister Modi will focus on boosting cooperation in key sectors such as agriculture, health, defense, technology, energy, and education. The two sides are also expected to sign several agreements, including one establishing a Ghana-India Joint Commission and another to promote traditional and alternative medicine research. Trade between the two nations currently stands at $3 billion, with gold remaining a major driver of Ghana's positive trade balance. Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa says the visit builds on a long history of cooperation dating back to Ghana's independence movement, with both countries playing key roles in founding the non-aligned movement championed by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. For WADR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
Liberia is hosting the 10th meeting of the Port Management Association of West and Central Africa and the Harbour Masters Network Conference. Nearly 200 delegates from 20 African countries representing 22 ports and management associations are attending the event. Taking place in Monrovia, the 10th edition of the conference is themed Navigating the Challenges of Port Safety and Security. WADR's Abraham Parker reports.
Speaking at the opening ceremony, Sekou Dukle, Managing Director of the National Port Authority, emphasized the crucial role ports play in a nation's revenue streams.
We view this also as an opportunity to advocate for deeper integration across port authorities in the region. The National Port Authority is recommitting to be present in PIMACA different sector meetings and annual gatherings, not as a mere participant, but as a strong and reliable partner.
India Bertrand, president of the Harbour Masters and Port Facility Security Officers Network, said the conference provides an essential platform for collaboration on port safety and security.
This annual gathering is for all of us for coordinating experience sharing and the formulation of joint action for the safe and resilient management of our ports.
For his part, Liberia's Deputy Minister of Transport for Land and Rail Transport, Randolph Knight, underscored safety at ports, noting that it involves the protection of infrastructure, cargo, services, and the workforce.
West and Central Africa is home to 90% of Africa's population. Underscores our immense potential. By harmonizing security and safety protocol across our ports, we can unlock unparalleled economic benefits, transforming the region into an economic hub of the continent, the world.
During the 3-day event that ends on Thursday, delegates and marine experts will share practical experiences, explore innovative security measures, and strengthen regional cooperation to tackle contemporary port challenges. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Up next is Seconde Janko with the press review, bringing you major stories on the front pages of Gambian dailies.
Press review begins with the Standard newspaper today, and the lead story on the Standard newspaper reads: former Deputy Ambassador Kamara accuses government of forced retirement. However, the PMO rejects these allegations. That's the lead story on the Standard newspaper. With some legal matters, this sort of one means top security officials take witness box in PIU shooting trial. The other one reads: NPP reacts to more defections of grassroots officials. NAM moves bill to ease medicine importation rules. That is Honorable Amadou Kamara. Honorable Amadou Kamara is the chairperson of the Health Committee of the Gambia's National Assembly, and it is reported that he has moved a bill that will ease medicine importation into the country. Let's take a look at the other news making headlines, specifically on the Fourier newspaper. And the lead story on the Fourier reads: residents fear floods along Bakote Kotu Channel. These are flood-prone areas in the Gambia. Mayor Law gets 60,000 monthly fuel allocation. Former Banjul CEO testifies. Mayor Law is Rohi Malik Law, who is the mayor of the capital city of the Gambia, that is Banjul. And also, the same former CEO admits making unauthorized payments to ex-Banjul deputy mayor. This other one reads: 3 media houses present videos in police shooting trial. And this other one reads: rural Gambians defy ban, burn charcoal for survival. Let's take a look at the final newspaper for today, and that is the Point newspaper. And the lead story on the Point newspaper reads: IGP's court snub unacceptable against rule of law, according to Justice Jaite. Justice Jaite is a High Court judge in the Gambia, and he has ordered Inspector General of Police, the government spokesperson, to appear before the court relating to alleged PIU shooting that led to the killing of 2 police officers. This other one reads: witness says defense claim is false in Pablo Jabi and Co. case that is related to a drug trial. And finally, Assembly pushes new medicine rules to avoid shortages. These are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies.
Many thanks, Seconde Janko.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our guest on this edition of Newslink is Gabin Ajaho, a Togolese political analyst. Speaking to WADR Friend Service, Ajaho describes the current political situation in the country triggered by a nationwide protest last week demanding the resignation of long-time ruler Foya Singbe. While the new adopted constitution in Togo abolishes the provision for electing the president, other elections such as the parliamentary and municipal ballots will be held. Thus, campaigns kicked off on Monday for the local election scheduled for July 17 amid political unrest. For these and some concerns, Gabin Ajaho tells us whether the current political climate will affect the campaign and subsequent elections.
On ne peut pas dire que l'atmosphère politique tendue ne va pas agir sur.
We cannot say that the tense political atmosphere will not affect the electoral campaigns that have already commenced. The socio-economic and socio-political situation is very complicated. There have been arrests, there have been beatings, there have been tortures, and there have been 7 deaths. So it is much more complicated today to say that these demonstrations will not affect the electoral campaigns and even the next elections. It will be very difficult for the candidates to be able to approach populations who are already mourning their deceased loved ones. It will be very complicated because, as you know, these deaths are attributed to the security and defense forces. So it will be very complicated for the candidates to be able to approach populations and to make themselves heard, especially because it has already started by means of communication, even by leaving certain populations in interactive broadcasts that say no. It is absolutely useless to want to participate in elections while citizens are suffering in their souls and nothing is done concerning their claims. So they are seeing those who participate in these elections, that is, certain populations, as accomplices of the power in place. The repression of the demonstrations lauded by the forces of order has led to 7 deaths, according to the organizers.
Do you think that the protest will subside anytime soon?
Bon, je ne le dirai pas. Je ne le dirai pas parce que après la
manifestation du 6 juin, I won't say it because after the demonstrations on June 6, we thought, especially after the release of the rapper Amron, that many people thought that there would be no more demonstrations, that the Togolese would get tired of the demonstrations. But we have the impression that this is increasing by the day. The mobilization is increasing. The populations are coming out much more because on the 26th, people came out. On the 27th, the many people came out, and the 28th the same. So we can't say that the movement will subside because people are claiming something, and until today, the Togolese government has not responded. The government acts as if nothing happened, while the statements denouncing these cases of death came from left to right from the international community. And the ECOWAS has just released a statement too about what happened in Togo last time. So we can say that the populations are really not exhausted, especially since until today, the president of the council has not yet come out to speak to the citizens. This has increased the frustration within the population, and I am not sure that the Togolese are exhausted after these 3 days of demonstrations. That is, the demonstrations on the 26th, 27th, and 28th of last June.
Du 26, 27 et 28 juin passé.
Gabin Ajao is a Togolese political analyst. Up next is sports news, and we have our sports anchor here in the studio, Sankle Janko. Good afternoon, good to have you join us.
Good afternoon, Abdullah. I'm glad to be here. Let me go straight to, of course, business. I'm always excited when it comes to sport.
Exactly.
And let's begin with tennis, because American second seed Coco Gauff suffered a shock exit at the Wimbledon, failing 7-3, 7-6, 6-1 to Ukrainian Diana Zamoraska in a stunning upset in Wimbledon yesterday evening. Gauff, aiming to complete a rare French Open Wimbledon double after her recent triumph in Paris, struggled to find rhythm against Zamoraska, who aggressively played against her and she eventually lost. Some football news: Sunderland have signed Senegalese midfielder Habib Diarra from RC Strasbourg in a record £30 million deal, including 27 million upfront and 3 million in add-ons. The 21-year-old signed a 5-year contract and arrives at direct replacement for Joe Bellingham, who joined Borussia Dortmund. In other news, Ghana international Antonio Semenyo has extended his contract at Bournemouth, keeping him until 2020. And in the FIFA Club World Cup, Guinea international Sekou Girassi was the standout performer as Borussia Dortmund defeat Monterrey 2-1 to book their place in the FIFA Club World Cup semi-finals. The striker scored both goals in the first half to help Dortmund secure a place in the last 4.
Well, that's a good one for Guinea.
Of course, that's a good one for Guinea. He's a top striker. Sekou Girassi is one of the best strikers in the world, and he plays for the Sili National.
Well, we'll keep tracking that.
Of course, we'll keep tracking.
Thank you, Sankule. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Umu Danyogo for for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, Instagram at WADR English, on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live on wadr.org. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is a replay of WADR's flagship gender program 50-50 with Nadiri Tete. And do join Demba Amar An at the top of the hour of 1 p.m. for the second edition of our comprehensive news package in French and Fushifu. I'm Abdullah Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big